Shrapnel.
Welcome to Film Shrapnel. My name's Tobias. This is Craig. And
How's it going?
How is it going, Craig? And this is your one-stop spot for everything movies. This is our second episode of Horror Month, or third episode of Horror Month, the 1960s. We're kicking it off with Witchfinder General, Vincent Price.
Yeah, this this film. I'm not sure. Do we count this as actually horror? That's the first thing I'm thinking about.
Well, yeah, you know what? Like after watching it, I'm like, I'm not sure we should have done this one for for Horror Month because, well, look, it's considered a horror film. You look it up, you type it up, it's considered a horror film, and I think there is a lot of horrific things going on, but it doesn't feel very much of a horror. Maybe
No.
in the tone, perhaps, the setting, perhaps. I mean, but yeah, there's not real much horror going on, but there's a lot of horrific stuff going on. I suppose. I mean, would you consider Cannibal Holocaust to be a horror film?
I
Yeah.
haven't seen it, but I would probably, yeah.
And this is like, it's definitely not on that level, but it's the same thing. Like, it's not like a murderer going round, or it sort of is though. This is almost a slasher film, but like, it's about witch hunting. But obviously, as we know it to be, witches aren't real, and this film does not even for a second try and convince you that witches are real.
Mhm.
They try and show you as the Witchfinder as this, just someone who really likes the hunt, the torture, the kill. Doesn't really care if you're a fucking witch. Like there's a lot of horrific deaths in this, but again, not remotely graphic either. So it doesn't. You're right. I don't think it feels like a horror film.
Yeah, that's. I was expecting because I didn't read too much about this before I started watching it, and I was expecting some witchcraft. I was
Yeah.
expecting something to happen, like maybe the Witchfinder General, our character called Hopkins, played by Price, was going to come up against a witch or something like this. That's what
This is it. It is Vincent Price, who is like a connoisseur of the horror. And Vincent Price, yeah, I think you're right, though. I think I was expecting, like, he's a charlatan, he's a fraudster. And then when he does come to go up against the witch, he'll get, his ass handed to him. But that didn't happen. It really is just about the atrocities committed against women at the time when you were accused of being, engaging in witchcraft.
Yeah.
And it doesn't pull any punches. It's like, this is fucking brutal. These are the rules, what was it? Because there's one point where he drowns 3 people and he said, if they die, then they go up to heaven or something or whatever. So you're innocent. But if you float or something else, that's the witchcraft protecting you, and you'll be hung or burnt.
Yeah, but I think they were still hung. I remember seeing them hanging from trees after.
I suppose they were doing everything they could. They were like, kill the witch by any means necessary. But it's just torture. It's just torturing poor human beings. It's really bad. And this really happened. This sort of stuff really happened. It's fucking wild.
It's interesting because at the beginning, when we first meet him, about 15 minutes into the film, by the way, he's on a horse and he's talking with the other guy who's the assistant called Stern. And he's kind of implying that he does God's work, but Stern, he's just like a guy who likes to torture people. So like I'm not sure completely how much he enjoys. Well, maybe he does. I guess maybe he
I
likes to
think
pretend like to put out this kind of image that he doesn't like it, because he thinks it's it's brutal, it's wrong. But at the same time, I don't know.
I think he likes it. I do,
Maybe,
and I think Vincent Price plays it that way as well.
yeah, definitely.
I really think he plays it like he's enjoying himself.
Yeah.
Although I have quite an interesting story about this film. Um, do you wanna? You might want to fact check this. I don't know the director's name,
All right.
but I believe this is his third film.
Okay.
Also,
Hold on.
so you want to double check that real quick before I finish this point, because again, yeah, I don't want to get this wrong.
Oh, it took me actually straight to Matthew Hopkins on Wikipedia. So he was a real guy.
He was a real guy.
Yeah.
Yo, that's cool. Well, it's not cool, but it's cool that it's based on a true story then.
He was only 27 when he died, by the way.
So hang on, Vincent Price is playing 27 in this movie.
Yeah. Also, this guy, John Stern, was also a real guy as well, his assistant. I need to read about this. I didn't know
That's
that was a real
wicked.
guy. The director is called Michael Reeves.
Michael Reeves, yeah. And he'd only made like two films before this, or
3
maybe three.
films.
Three
He,
films before this, so this is his
yeah.
fourth film.
And this is his
So,
last film as well.
and he was only like in his early 20s or something when he made this as well, I believe.
24, it
He
says.
was 24. Right. So he was a young director. This was his fourth film, and it turned out to be his last. They had a massive fight on set, where he's trying to give Vincent Price direction. And he's
Hmm.
saying to him, he's basically saying to him, Vincent, you know, you're overacting the shit out of this. Like, you need to be more real. This is a real film. This is about realism. I'm not interested in your over the top shit. And Vincent Price got really angry and was like, I've made hundreds of films, hundreds and hundreds of films. What have you done? And Reeves said to him, I've made three good ones. And
Yeah.
that, like, they hated each other, apparently. Hated each other.
So I actually just read that line that you just said. So he said, "A young man, I had made 84 films. What have you done?" And Reeves replies, "I made 3 good ones."
I made three
Uh,
good ones. Yeah. What a great line.
that's a great comeback.
Yeah.
But actually, I don't think that's why he stopped making films,
Oh, really?
because he died the next year.
Oh, oh shit. Vincent Price put a curse on him.
Yeah. He,
He used that old voodoo shit that he learnt in his earlier films.
yeah, he died
Oh,
in
that's really sad.
only 25 years old in 1969. He was found dead in his bedroom, probably related to barbiturate overdose, accidental one. So,
Shit.
yeah, we lost
Oh.
a potentially amazing director.
Yeah, no, because I really like this.
Yeah, it's interesting as well because I also see on Wikipedia they've also considered it a horror, a
Yeah,
period horror film. Period.
yeah.
That's an interesting.
Well, this is the thing, because it's talking about how it's more about the atrocities against these people. Like, you could absolutely do a horror film about like something like the Holocaust, for example. You could make it a horror film, and I think that's basically what they've done here. Like, they've taken something that you could make like just a very dark drama about, but instead it's like, actually no, let's do this in a more um through a horror lens. But it
Mm.
doesn't feel like a horror film, though. It really doesn't feel like a horror film.
If anything, it feels more like a crime kind of thing in a kind of funny way.
You're
But
enjoying torture, don't you?
yeah, and but I also what I really liked about this film, is because the whole thing is really This is set during the English Civil War. So it was like 1600s, right? So you got Oliver Cromwell on one side who wants who's fighting on the side of the Parliament, and then you got King Charles who wants to be like an all powerful monarch, and which we don't see any of that shit. I think maybe we might see a Cromwell at one point, but that doesn't matter. What happens is, because there's chaos when these two powers are fighting each other, the country's just like lawless. People like this guy Matthew Hopkins can go around and basically, like, the fanatics are basically let loose because there's no rule of law. The fanatics are kind of taking control, and I think that's very interesting. Like, looking at today, like how so many like far right groups are just going fucking nuts, and like so many fanatic groups, and like some really ultra crazy Christian groups in America, and like I think there's an interesting comparison that can be made there. But with that,
I actually agree with that. That makes a lot. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I really see how that could be mimetic of now. Maybe this is worth a remake. We said this about the Blob for the last episode, but maybe this is worth a remake as well. What year was Witchfinder General?
I think 1968, but I could be wrong.
Sounds about right.
68, 10 years after the Blob, by the way. What was I going to say? There is actually should be a remake at some point of this film. I read that some Danish filmmaker bought the rights to it several years ago, so we might get one at one point. And I really think it'd be really, really ripe for a remake.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think that'd be really good. Did you really feel much for the sort of main characters in this? I didn't really care for them.
You mean Richard and his wife?
And his wife, because I feel I like the movie a lot. It's just I felt a lot of it was quite, boring.
Oh, that's a risky thing to say, but no, I agree.
I feel like the main characters were just really dull, and it's like, just get me back to Vincent Price.
I think that's symptomatic of many films like this from this time. You get, actually, even today, sometimes the villains just far outshine the main characters. The main characters are boring.
Well,
make them too plain and nice.
The villains are more fun to play for the actors as well,
and they just have more depth of character as well.
Absolutely. I will say, besides all the unnecessary death in this film, I would have loved to have lived in Cromwell times, in Blackadder times. I feels like Blackadder. I love it.
Yeah,
I'd love to live back then. But again, too much unnecessary death. But I like the past. The past, I think, is really cool.
I think you just would have smelled like shit all the time.
Yeah. Oh God, I'd love that. I thought the sound effects. There's a fight scene. There's like a fist fight, and it's like really, really bad. It's like, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And like as much as the director was like all about realism, I thought the sound effects were pretty dire.
It just takes you away from the realism, doesn't it?
When you can hear a fist whistling through the air.
But we've all been punched in the face in our lives. We know it doesn't sound like that.
No, it just sounds like that's it.
Yeah.
I feel like there's one point. So Vincent Price gets told by his little helper that Richard guy, Stern, that Richard wants to kill him. And I've never seen any villain in any movie just be so unremotely phased by learning that someone's about like trying to kill them. He's just like, well, that's fine. And it's like, as much as Vincent Price locked heads with Reeves on set, I feel like whatever went on between them, it did get one of the best Vincent Price performances out of him. It's an incredible performance.
Yeah, it's very entertaining. I hadn't watched much of Vincent Price, by the way, so I didn't know too much about him. I read a bit about him after, and I realized I saw how influential he is.
Yeah.
Um, I wasn't expecting his voice to sound like that, so I saw the poster first, and I guess I made some had some expectations in my mind, and then I hear him talk for the first time. I didn't know he was American either. I thought this is a completely British film,
Mm.
and his voice, yeah, was quite a very interesting way of speaking. Let's say,
Well, I suppose back in like the sort of 30s, 40s, 50s, like when sound was introduced in cinema, like there's a lot of American actors that were putting on this sort of transatlantic accent that was like not quite British, not quite American, just something in the middle there. Like there was this sort of transatlantic accent that sort of existed only in that sort of era of cinema as well. Like we got out of it quite quickly, where Americans, just started to sound more American. But there was like a sweet spot where all these American movie, all these American actors had these really sort of well-spoken RP, almost British sounding voices.
yeah, it's interesting as well because there are certain accents around like the northeast of America, like in New England,
Mm.
like like they're quite similar actually. Well, not quite similar. How am I trying to say? They have some similarities. Maybe it's better to say to like British English. Like there was this one video I was watching about like it's really interesting by the way. I really recommend you watch it. It's actually more than one video. It's two videos, and this accent coach does the whole of North America, all the different accents, and there are some pockets in like the northeast where they have very specific pronunciations, almost like British. Like most American guys, if you ask them, say Mary, Mary, and Mary, it sounds the same. But there is like one like region like Vermont or somewhere, I can't remember, New Hampshire. Uh, they although they have a US accent, they still make that distinction between, you can hear the difference between those three words. And I
Well,
think that
you
Price
you
has
have,
kind of one of these accents that's a little bit like from that kind of
yeah,
region,
and
which
you
almost passes British.
because you also have these sort of coastal, like sort of fisherman towns in America, these sort of coastal areas that they all sort of sound like they're from Bristol,
Yeah,
like Willem Dafoe in The Lighthouse.
I was just thinking that one. I love
Yeah,
that. I love his accent in that film. It's
and
great.
he proper sounds like he's from Bristol. Why
He
you be
loves
spitting
it.
your beans? You lads. So yeah, like yeah, it is interesting how yeah you can definitely hear the evolution of some of these accents coming from English tongue. Um, there's a guy with loads of moles I found quite distracting. Did you notice this guy?
No. Who? Where? When was this mole man?
It was a mole man. There was a mole man on the screen. I didn't like the mole man. He was distracting. This is the thing. My only note from the scene he's in is the mole man is here. and, and like yeah, I found him so distracting. I actually don't know what else was going on in the scene to provide you context. I was just looking
Mole
at the mole
man.
man. I was I'm just looking at the mole man. Um, but I will say I think the movie, as much as I've said, I don't think it's a horror film, or it doesn't feel like a horror film anyway. Uh, but there's a lot of scenes where like people are getting hung, drowned. There's a bit where they're like stabbing this woman Elizabeth, like with just sticks before they hang her or set her on fire and shit.
That
Uh,
fire scene, by the way, was a bit.
but it's pretty. That's pretty graphic, in all fairness. But I've got a note here that I said the most of this movie is very very brutal without being graphic, and it's
Yeah.
only the final bit that I would say it does finally step over that line. Uh, but like I suppose when you make violence graphic, it doesn't always feel super realistic. You can have a sort of detachment from it. if you shoot someone in the head and it blows up, you know that doesn't really happen in real life. So, you know, you can have a bit more of a detachment from it. It's more fun. But I felt like a lot of the violence in this, it felt brutal without being graphic. Ergo, it felt a lot more real to me.
Yeah, there was one scene in particular that you just reminded me of where Stern gets shot in his shoulder
Yes.
and he has to use a knife to dig out the bullet. And
Mm.
the way it's shot, you don't see anything. And you see him that he's struggling, he's in pain, and I think he passes out and then he wakes up a bit later. But like if you shot that today, you would 100% shoot
Close
how,
up.
yeah,
Close up
100%.
with the blade digging into the meat. Yeah, you absolutely do that nowadays. And I actually quite like how this film displays the violence in a very minimalistic way, because
Hmm.
it really does make it feel a bit more real. I feel like everyone who gets hung in this movie, it does look like it's a real person getting hung.
Yeah.
It's pretty. That's pretty shocking, I found. And I also, even though the bit where they're stabbing at Elizabeth, you can see that they are stabbing the ground around her so they can't hurt her. But but like the way she screams, the way it's shot, like it still feels very, very brutal, even though you can see they're making a concerted effort not to really hurt her.
There's a lot of screaming women in this film.
Yeah,
A
but again,
lot.
I feel like a lot, like all the screaming in this felt very, very genuine. I can't tell you, like, how many times have you heard that Wilhelm scream? You know,
Oh,
do you know what I mean? It just doesn't feel genuine anymore. But all the screaming in this, it felt shrill. It felt like it was like recorded live. Oh yeah, like yeah, this film just felt very, very real. I
yeah.
really appreciated how real it felt. That's how I feel like it's a real testament to the director, and like how he really was able to get across the brutality of all this without even showing that much.
Yeah. My only criticism really about that is it's supposed to be taking place during the Civil War. And I
Mm.
felt that it didn't really look very much like a war. It didn't really feel like the
No.
country was ravished. It looked too nice and well kept. Like I think if I would have done that film, but I guess it's expenses, isn't it? Really, it would have cost you money. It should just look more like it's things are fucked up and worn out, and maybe people are
Yeah,
struggling.
but I suppose you could make the argument that this is a sort of like, uh, it's a town. It takes place in a town that's sort of out in the sticks a bit. Doesn't really get bothered by all this bollocks. You could make that argument.
Maybe, yeah. By the way, I was just thinking of something. Why? So, is it Elizabeth, the woman that he loves,
I
Richard
think so.
loves, or
No, I don't think it's Richards. I don't think that's the. I
that's
just
another
remember a
woman.
guy going, Elizabeth.
Yeah, yeah, and he tries to stab Hopkins. Yeah, that was another woman. But
Hmm.
so Richards, was it Sarah? Maybe it was Sarah. I don't know. It's such a generic name, Richard and Sarah. Doesn't matter. So Sarah's father, or sorry, uncle, is a priest, and he gets accused of being a Satan worship. No, no, there's a word that he uses. Idolater, idolater. That's what he calls them. Hopkins' character. He calls them idolaters, and yeah, and I was just wondering, like, what must he have done? I don't think he actually did anything that must have been suggested that he was any kind of like Satan worshiper or something. I reckon people like Hopkins got used at this time just to settle grievances, like
Yeah.
just say that guy, yeah, he's a Satan worshiper, and then you get the witch hunter out, and he now you have to prove you're not a witch, and then you just get murdered, and then yeah,
I
that,
suppose it's a pretty easy way of dealing with your enemies back then.
yeah,
I think you're right. I think like all of these loose sentences that he's putting down, because there's one point where a guy who survives the torture, he just, as like in his dying breath, he says, "May God help you,
it's the same guy, it's the
Hopkins."
priest, yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, may God help you, because, you know, he knows that it's a load of bollocks. I would be so angry. I'd look, I you have no idea. You have no idea.
You
I'd be like, you know how
fucking prick.
dumb you are. You dumb fuck. You dumb fucking idiots. I can't believe you're making me
See,
die
listen
on
to how
this.
he talks. That's definitely a witch right there. That's only how witches talk.
These aren't spells. These are curse words from the future. He's come from the future. We told you he was a witch.
Yeah.
I tell you another thing I found quite disturbing, and again, not too graphic, but there's a public hanging, and there are children standing around watching as if it's like entertainment.
And then when I think it's around the time that Elizabeth is killed with the fire, and then after she's all burnt
Brutal
up, the
without.
kids are like playing with sticks, poking the ashes, which was a bit disturbing as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I quite like the cinematography as well, because it feels flat, but it sort of adds to the authenticity of like all the shots. It feels very real still.
Yeah, I did like it, but sometimes I did feel that some of the shots were way too dark and you couldn't see what was going on. I thought that was a bit annoying at points, but yeah, it's just here and there like that.
But I think we can all agree Hopkins, aka Vincent Price, he enjoys his job way too much.
I think it's fun to be a bad guy, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying that that's his problem, is that he enjoys his job too much. It's like if you're a begrudging witch hunter, like, oh, I'm so sorry, I have to kill you because you're a witch. Like you'd be all right. But it's like, let that. He's like the Emperor from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Oh, Vincent Price would have made a great Emperor in Star Wars.
I think he could have nailed that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about so now I said earlier, I was wondering about for like Hopkins, what is his moral? What is he? Where are his morals really? Like, does he really?
He's just a bad motherfucker.
Yeah, but I mean, like in terms of what he does as a witch hunter, does he really believe that he's hunting witches, or is he just doing it for the money?
I don't think so. I don't think he's doing it because he believes it.
Yeah, I wasn't sure until there was a point where Sarah, so basically her uncle, the priest, is taken to be trialed as a witch, and she's kind of abandoned and left by herself because Richard, her soon-to-be husband, is in the war, and she has to, by the way, there's an interesting bit. She has to kind of lie that the man is not her uncle, because it's safer for her to lie than to tell the truth right here, even though she's done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of fucked up. And I was going to say that, so basically she kind of offers herself up to him. And I was wondering, like, how's this going to go? Is he going to give in to her and basically enjoy her? You know what I mean when I say that. I don't know why I phrased it that way.
He's going to enjoy her.
Is he going to get laid and enjoy it and give her a pass?
Why do you keep saying enjoy?
What? But you know what I mean? Because the other option
I know what you mean, but I love
is he going to aha, you're offering yourself to me. That means you're a witch. But he basically sleeps with her, and because he's sleeping with her, he lets the priest live a bit longer. Like, Stern's wondering, why is that happening? Why is he not just killing the guy? He's like just left him in the prison for longer, and eventually Stern finds out, and I think he rapes her. You don't see it; it's off screen, and then he just decides to kill the priest. My original point is that because he basically gave the priest a pass so he could sleep with his niece.
Yeah.
His moral, he doesn't really get. He doesn't give a shit about witches. Doesn't believe in witches. He's just using this as a way to, just to profit basically and like take advantage of people. That's what he's doing. So yeah, he doesn't believe in witches. He's just an evil bastard.
Exactly. You know, it doesn't really matter to him. At the end of the day, he's just an opportunist.
Yeah.
So I forget what the whole point of Richard's story was, but they get captured as well. Richard and his girlfriend or his wife, and it
Captured.
was at this they're captured, aren't they? And then they have to try and escape.
Oh yeah, you mean towards the end? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and like number one, it feels too easy to escape from their situation, but all right. But he uses the axe to chop up Vincent Price.
Yeah, that was a bit brutal. Today that would be
Brute.
so much more graphic to
I
fucking
mean,
beat someone
yeah,
to death with an axe.
but I'm sure if you look carefully, you can see the axe bouncing off Vincent Price because it's
Yeah.
made of rubber. I'm pretty sure you can see it bounce.
And then at the end, just before he really gets to kill Hopkins, someone shoots him, and Richard's
Yeah,
like, "Why did you kill him? Like you took him from me. Like he
yeah.
wasn't able to get his revenge."
I wrote that down. You took him from me. I love this line. And then and then it literally just ends there, doesn't it? The girl screams, and then we just get some calm melodies on the lute,
Yeah.
and that's the end of the movie.
But you know, there was one other. There's one thing I've been dying to mention that I thought was a bit stupid about this film that I need to say. Do you remember when Richard is told to go to the coast and stop a boat that might be
Yeah,
King Charles's boat,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they go all the way to the sea, and there's this guy there, and and he's like, I didn't know there was a war going on. Yeah, I had no idea. And
Huh?
then, oh yeah, Lavaham. Yeah, yeah, they're having a witch trial over there. How the fuck does he know that there's a witch trial happening in the town over, but doesn't know that there is a civil war like going on? What? How, I just thought that was
Well,
really
but
stupid.
then, but this is it. Maybe it's that kind of area that it's just so out of the way. I watched Banshees of Inisherin uh, earlier in the year, and that's set during the Troubles.
I think
So
it's
they
actually
just
the Irish Civil War, which is not maybe technically the Troubles. Just to say that. Sorry, I could be wrong.
sorry, no. I thought it was more modern, but all right, fair enough. Um, but because they're so out of the way of it, it doesn't really affect them. They just sort of get on with their day. They can hear the gunfire from across the water, but it doesn't bother them. It doesn't. They're like, why are they so pent up? What's wrong with them over there?
Yeah,
You
I,
know.
I, I know what you mean. I I get what you're saying, but I'm not sure I completely agree. I'm not sure I'm willing to give it a pass on that, to be honest.
Well, how many movies have you made, Craig?
Good point. Say no more. Say no more.
Because he's made four good ones, and Vincent Price has made 100 plus, I'm sure.
But not all of them
God,
good, probably.
not most of them terrible. I would say most of them are terrible. Like I remember seeing him in like a Frankenstein, uh, like a Hammer horror Frankenstein. So not like the Boris Karloff ones, that or something a bit more. I think it was like around when Christopher Lee was Dracula, that sort of era.
Hmm.
Um, but Vincent Price, I do like him. I think I've seen a Jekyll and Hyde with him as well. But I've always liked Vincent Price, but he's pretty shit. Well, he's not. He's a great actor, but he's over the top because he's in a lot of over the top movies. And I think this film really is the best performances I've ever seen from him. I think Reeves makes a very credible point that you need to listen to me because I make exclusively good movies. You almost exclusively make shit ones.
Yeah. Oh, I wish I knew if what Price's reaction would have been to that comeback.
Oh, I would have been so. I can't believe you. You fucking asshole. I can't believe you saying this to me. I can't believe.
Yeah, I could
No, I'm sure.
imagine.
I'm sure he was very, very flustered because I bet no one has ever spoken to him like that since he became famous.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Because
Uh,
he commands a lot of respect. He is Vincent Price at the end of the day. He is very prolific. He has done a lot, and he was a pretty massive megastar at the time in what you could describe as a nobody's movie. Like, who is this kid at the end of the day? You know, you could have made that argument, but
mm,
I feel like this kid definitely held his own and made a very, very, very good movie. I really like this movie.
at the age of
It,
24.
at the age of 24, yeah, think about it in those terms. This movie, it's very, very mature. It's a very mature film and subject matter. It's not like I say, me and you, we're sat here like, okay, but when is he going to fight the real witch? That's our
Oh my God,
that
you sound so stupid when you
that
say it that
it's
way.
exactly that's our immature bullshit coming out. And like he was 24 and he made such a mature, made very mature choices in the development of this film. Really,
Yeah.
really good.
By the way, I'm not sure what version you would have watched, but at the beginning of mine, it mentions that it was a director's cut, and the original
Yeah,
was
I have
too
the
violent,
same.
so they cut some scenes when it was released. And I don't know if you noticed, but there are several moments throughout the film where the quality declines quite significantly for like a moment, and then it goes back. And I think that's to do potentially
With
with
censorship.
yeah, because I remember
Yeah.
we saw a similar thing. Remember when we did My Bloody Valentine?
Mm.
That also had censorship stuff happen. Uh,
Yes.
and again, like there was shots that had a different look. Like the quality just wasn't the same as the rest of the film, and I think that's what probably
Mm.
happened here. So there's
Yeah.
yeah bits like that, but looking at it, I didn't really find. Maybe it's just because we're modern, we're so desensitized to violence now that those shots didn't
So,
really mess me up or anything.
so are you trying to say that the director's cut has had stuff removed or has everything put back?
I think they cut some because it was too violent, and I think there was something that said like about how our modern sensibilities have changed since when this film was released. So like now they can release the extended cut with um
Mm.
with some stuff that might have been a bit too on edge for the time.
I mean, I didn't find it too graphic at all. If anything, I thought it was quite tame to today's standards,
Yeah, there was some
but
side boob
still
at one
very
point.
good. I'm pretty much run out of steam on this. Do you have anything you want to bring up more, or
Uh,
should we rate this thing?
Let me see what else do I have. Sorry, I'm looking through my. I should really organize my notes more before I start. We
Yeah,
start
me
doing this.
too. Me too. I always end up finding notes that I didn't mention in the podcast after read. Oh yeah, here you go. I've written here. I'll do a note that I've written down. You don't see performances like this anymore. I
In
feel like
which
this
way?
is a very well, because I feel like everything's a bit more over the top nowadays. Certainly in the Marvel movies, everything's a joke. Everything's a quirky thing. You know, whereas this, it's just very gritty and grounded. Feels very real. We don't really
Mm,
get, and I think Vincent Price reserving himself really does sort of, like I say, you watch him in other stuff, it's night and day. The difference, you know, like he's the voice at the beginning of Thriller. You know, in the middle of Thriller, darkness falls across the land, the midnight
oh,
hour close at hand. Like that's Vincent Price, and like so he's very over the top usually, and this he's really not. He's very, very much collected and chill. You know, I've never seen him quite like this, and it really helps sell the rest of the movie around him. I think he's
yeah.
great in this, and he was really annoyed with his performance in this. But I really do think this guy Reeves got the best performance I've ever seen of Vincent Price.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in anything else that I know of, so I can't say.
This is I've seen him in like hundreds of movies. The problem is they're all pretty much of a muchness, and they bleed into one. I know I've seen him in Frankenstein movies, Jekyll and Hyde movies, other mad science movies. I might have even seen him in a Dracula movie, maybe playing Helsing or even
Hmm.
playing Dracula. Do you know what I mean? Like, you've seen him in 1,000,001 movies, but they're all pretty much the same. They're all pretty much the same tone, the same feel, and pretty much the same dialogue and everything.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point. I only have 2 more notes that I can find that I haven't mentioned. I'll go
Go on
through them
then.
really quickly. So I wrote, when the village people are telling Hopkins about how evil the priest is, it made me think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I think you
Yeah.
can probably guess what scene I'm talking
Hmm.
about, like where they're doing the witch trial for this blonde woman, and some guy's like, "She turned me into a newt," and everyone looks back at him and says, "I got better."
I got better.
Yeah, and then
Oh.
the last thing I wrote down, which I thought was quite funny. So when Richard hears, uh, oh, I'm not actually sure if I'm correct on this, but basically, I think he's running towards Laverham or wherever it is, to confront Hopkins, and he stops at one point in a field on his horse, and he asks the shepherd which way it is, and he's just scaring the fucking sheep everywhere on his fucking horse, and I'm just thinking, you prick! If I was a shepherd, I'd be so pissed
Yeah,
off
I'll
at
be.
you.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. You've just made my life so much more difficult than it needed to be.
I've got
You
to
twat.
find all these fucking sheep, get them together, count them. Some of them might even die or
Yeah.
disappear. What an asshole. Go
I
round the
mean,
sheep.
but again, that also reminds me very much of like Monty Python-y kind of, because this is the thing. If he'd started getting all up in his face, well, you took my sheep, you did. Like, that would be so Monty Python. It really would. You know, you there? Can you point me into the direction of what are you doing here? Asking me for help? Well, you've just ruined my fucking flock. Now I've got to go back and get him again.
Yeah.
Let's
It's
rate this
serious,
bad
bro.
boy. I feel like well, nowadays I often go first rating. So I'm gonna say to you, Craig, how many witches out of a coven are you gonna give this?
Well,
Because
see,
the correct answer is 0 witches, because there's no witches in this movie.
oh, that's true. That's true. How many innocently murdered women do you want to give this movie out of 10? Is that better?
Out of a church group.
Oh, fuck. Well, how big is the
uh,
church group?
I mean,
Out.
let's say it's out of 14 innocent women and a priest. 14 innocent women and a priest.
I give it 14, at least 10 or 11, I would say. But I will point out, I
Are you
don't
leaving
really,
the priest out of that, or are you
no,
adding? Is one of them the priest?
yeah, one of them's a priest. He doesn't get any, he doesn't get treated any different. Um, I will say, as a horror film, I don't really consider this much of a horror film, really. I
No,
see some people write it as like a folk horror, like on the same level as The Wicker
Wicker
Man.
Man.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I get. Although I think The Wicker Man is a bit more horror than this.
What?
Uh,
Say Wicker Man.
Wicker Man.
No, yeah, you're saying Wickerman.
What am I trying? Wicker Man. Wicker Man. Wickerman.
Yeah, but you're saying Wickerman.
Okay, I got it wrong. I said it wrong. I
It's
guess
yeah, but that's not. It's not like his name.
you're making me cry. You're making me cry right now. Uh, As I was saying before, I was rudely interrupted by someone who doesn't like my pronunciation of one film.
I didn't interrupt you. You interrupted yourself with the incorrect. Who says Wickerman?
Me by accident,
The
apparently.
Wickerman.
We're not having
Weird.
this discussion. We're not having this. Uh, yeah, what was I saying? So, I don't really think of it much of a horror film, although it
No.
is a bit, uh,
Brutal.
It's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah.
They're trying to go for a realist thing, which is quite interesting considering like you don't see many period things that go for a
It's
lot
the
of realism like that.
horrors. It's the horrors of the time.
Yeah. So I think it's a really great film.
Yes.
But we were intending to be a horror season. So if you're looking for a horror movie, maybe might not be what you're expecting, but still it's very good. So
It is good. What did you give it out of a coven? Out of 14 churchgoers?
11 or 12, including the priest.
I think I'll give it 10. I'll give it 10.
Oh, okay.
Well, out of 10, IMDb, I'd give it a 7.
Yeah, that's
Yeah. I think 7's fair. I think it's close. I think 7's fair. I'm not closer to an 8 or a 6 or anything like that. I think solid 7.
yeah.
Really good.
I'm quite excited if they make a remake and if they do it really well. I think
Yeah,
it'd be
it
really
could
good.
be really good. It could be really good, especially if you double down on the Wickerman vibes.
I think they should make him more.
No, you should have corrected my pronunciation of Wickerman.
No, I'm refusing to do that. I think that they could make him more of a fanatic and focus more on the fanaticism of the time. I think that'd be really good, but also make it like, really doesn't believe this shit. He's just doing it for the money and the power, really, like behind closed doors. But it's a bit like I think of like these kind of crazy bastards who run like mega churches in America. I don't think they really believe in fucking anything they say. They just enjoy the money and the power that come with it. So they put out that face like when they're on stage. But, behind closed doors, they're living in fucking mansions, rich as fuck off the money that people have given them because they believe their lies. So, like, that's how I kind of see. Yeah, I think it's a good commentary on these kind of people, these kind of charlatans who ruin people's lives for their own gain and manipulate people.
Snake oil salesman.
Yeah, exactly.
Like I said, I would recommend this film. I think it's a film worth watching. But yeah, I agree with you. If you're looking for a horror film, this probably ain't the vibe. You might want to look for something else that's more horror.
More
but this is
slashery.
but this is definitely very good. And it's, again, only like The Blob, it's only like 80 something minutes. It's very digestible. It's very quick to knock out. Yeah, I think, this is like 85 and then The Blob was like 83 or something. So, what are we doing next episode, Craig? Our 70s.
Let me see if I was intelligent.
Suspiria? Was it Suspiria?
Might be Suspiria for the 70s, yeah. Are you ready for this? Because it's long, isn't it?
How long is it?
Let me see. I can already hear the apprehension in your voice.
It's going to be like 3 hours or something. I could watch The Blob and Witchfinder General in the time it takes to watch.
It's
Suspiria.
an hour and 40.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah, just 20 minutes longer.
That's doable. That's fine. That's doable. All right. So next episode, guys, tune in because we'll be doing a real horror film, Suspiria, which is a really, really good film. I have seen it before. I had seen Witchfinder General before, but so long ago. And I really did have memories of real witchcraft in it. I must have been, bleeding it into another film in my head because I really did think that there was supernatural stuff going on in this. And it really wasn't. It really wasn't. But it's interesting, I think, to watch this film anyway for Horror Month because, like you said, it is considered like a folk horror.
And I think the whole thing of like witches and stuff goes quite well with October as well.
Yeah. All Hallows Eve, innit? It all makes sense. It's all full circle.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you everyone for listening to us. We are Film Shrapnel. Do check us out on that app formerly known as Twitter, at Film Shrapnel, capital F, capital S. Craig, you got anything to say to the lovely listeners?
Just keep listening to us. We love you guys for listening and stay tuned for more Horror Month.
You keep listening, we'll keep talking. Bye.
Bye.
Shrapnel!